Here's what the government doesn't want you to know about Aaron Swartz. This brilliant programmer co-founded Reddit, helped create RSS, and contributed to Creative Commons before most people even understood what the internet could become. But when he tried to liberate millions of academic papers that taxpayers had already funded, federal prosecutors charged him with crimes carrying up to 35 years in prison, ultimately threatened up to 50 years under a superseding indictment. Here's the thing that makes this case even more shocking. JSTOR itself declined to press charges, yet the feds refused to back down. His family called it prosecutorial overreach. His supporters called it a witch hunt. What really happened reveals how the system crushes the very innovators who built the digital world we depend on. Aaron's story started long before that courtroom. The boy who built the internet. What if I told you a 14-year-old helped create technology you use every day? While most teenagers in 2001 were playing video games or hanging out at the mall, Aaron Swartz was writing code that would power the modern internet. He wasn't just some computer whiz kid. Aaron was reshaping how information moved across the web, one line of code at a time. At 14, Aaron created RSS 1.0, the technology that feeds you news updates, podcast episodes, and social media content. Every time you see a notification from your favorite news app or your podcast player automatically downloads new episodes, you're using Aaron's invention. RSS stands for Really Simple Syndication, and it solved a massive problem. Before Aaron's work, you had to manually check dozens of websites to see if they had new content. RSS automated this process, creating the foundation for how we consume information today. That team-made code now powers over 1 million active feeds, still underpinning modern news delivery. Here's the thing that made Aaron different. While other tech prodigies chase money and fame, Aaron walked away from both. He co-founded Reddit in 2005 when he was just 19 years old. The site grew into one of the most visited platforms on the internet, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He sold his stake in Reddit, worth millions, yet walked away. His goal wasn't profit, but universal access to knowledge. Aaron even dropped out of Stanford after his first year to pursue open access work full-time. Aaron poured his energy into projects that most people couldn't even understand yet. He helped develop Creative Commons, the licensing system that lets creators share their work freely while keeping some rights. He created Markdown, the simple formatting language that millions of writers and programmers use every day to create web content. Each project had the same underlying mission: tear down the barriers that kept information locked away from ordinary people. But Aaron's idealism came with a dangerous edge. He didn't just believe information should be free, he believed that hoarding knowledge was morally wrong, especially when taxpayers funded the research. This wasn't some abstract philosophical position for Aaron. He saw information inequality as a life and death issue. Academic research that could save lives in developing countries sat behind paywalls that cost thousands of dollars. That same belief would soon put him directly in the crosshairs of powerful institutions that controlled access to human knowledge. The manifesto that started a war. In July 2008, Aaron wrote something that would put him in the government's crosshairs forever. The Guerrilla Open Access Manifesto wasn't just a document, it was a declaration of war against academic gatekeepers who controlled the world's knowledge behind expensive paywalls. Aaron believed that keeping taxpayer-funded research locked away was literally killing people in developing countries. Picture this: a researcher in Bangladesh needs access to a medical study about treating malaria. That research was funded by American taxpayers through government grants. But to read it, the researcher has to pay $35 per article to companies like Elsevier or Springer. Most people in developing nations can't afford these fees, so they're cut off from potentially life-saving information. The numbers behind this system are staggering. Academic publishers charge thousands of dollars for annual subscriptions to research journals. Elsevier, one of the biggest publishers, reported a profit margin of 37% in 2018. That's higher than Apple's peak profit margin of 27%. These companies were making billions by controlling access to research that taxpayers already funded. Scientists would conduct studies using government money, then hand over their copyright to publishers for free. The publishers would then charge outrageous fees for people to read the work. Aaron saw this as a moral crime against humanity. In his manifesto, he wrote that forcing academics to pay to read their colleagues' work was unacceptable, especially when public money funded the research. He argued that the world's scientific and cultural heritage was being digitized and locked up by private corporations, creating massive inequality in access to knowledge. The manifesto called for mass civil disobedience to liberate scientific knowledge. Aaron urged people to take information wherever it was stored, make copies, and share them with the world. He denounced what he called the private theft of public culture, and insisted that sharing information was a moral imperative. This wasn't just philosophical rambling. Just months after publishing the manifesto, Aaron put his words into action. He downloaded nearly 20% of federal court records from the PACER system to make them freely available. The FBI investigated him in 2008, but no prosecution followed. Aaron had proven he was willing to risk everything for his beliefs. The manifesto marked Aaron as a direct threat to billion-dollar publishing companies. His words galvanized the open access movement and inspired others to challenge the system. But Aaron wasn't content to just write about change or make small gestures. He was preparing for something much bigger, the download that destroyed everything. In September 2010, Aaron walked into MIT with a laptop and started what prosecutors would later call the crime of the century. But this wasn't just file sharing. Aaron was systematically downloading millions of academic papers from JSTOR, and the government was about to make him pay. Aaron connected his laptop directly to MIT's network in a small utility closet on campus. MIT had open access to JSTOR's database of academic journals, which contained millions of research papers worth hundreds of millions in subscription fees. Aaron wrote scripts to automatically download articles at a massive scale. His program ran constantly, pulling down nearly 5 million articles, about 80% of the entire archive, over several months. The technical operation was surprisingly simple, but incredibly bold. Aaron masked his activity by rotating through different IP addresses when JSTOR blocked his connection. When MIT's network administrators noticed the unusual traffic, Aaron would pause the downloads and resume later from a different access point. He stored the files on external hard drives hidden in the utility closet. JSTOR's servers started slowing down from the massive download requests, and the company's own systems crashed under the load, compelling them to block MIT entirely for days. Aaron kept finding new ways to access their system. His persistence eventually triggered an investigation. MIT first blocked his access, but when he continued, federal agents installed a hidden camera in the utility closet to catch him in the act. On January 6, 2011, MIT police and a Secret Service agent arrested Aaron near Harvard campus. The charges were staggering: wire fraud, computer fraud, unlawfully obtaining information from protected computers, and recklessly damaging protected computers. Federal prosecutors wanted 35 years in prison and $1 million in fines for downloading academic papers. Here's what makes this case absolutely insane. JSTOR dropped all charges after Aaron returned the downloaded files. The company released a statement saying they had resolved their concerns and didn't want to press charges. They got their data back and were satisfied with the outcome. But federal prosecutors refused to back down. Even when the alleged victim walked away, the government pushed forward with the full prosecution. US Attorney Carmen Ortiz's office treated Aaron like a dangerous criminal who had threatened national security. They applied the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, the same law used to prosecute foreign hackers and cyber terrorists. Aaron faced a choice that would determine everything: the system that kills its heroes. The prosecution offered Aaron a deal that revealed the true cruelty of the system. Federal prosecutors said he could serve just 6 months in a low-security facility if he pleaded guilty to multiple felonies. But Aaron would have to accept the felon label for the rest of his life, admitting he was a criminal for trying to free academic research that taxpayers had already funded. Aaron refused. He couldn't bring himself to accept that label for believing information should be free. This decision set him on a collision course with prosecutors who were determined to make an example of him. The stakes only got worse. After the initial indictment carrying up to 35 years, a superseding indictment in September 2012 raised the charges to 13 counts and potential prison time to 50 years. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act that prosecutors used against Aaron had already destroyed other internet pioneers. This 1986 law was written before most people knew what the internet was, but prosecutors twisted it to criminalize activities that violated terms of service agreements. Ross Ulbricht, who created the Silk Road marketplace, faced similar CFAA charges and received life in prison. The law turned minor computer infractions into federal crimes carrying decades behind bars. US Attorney Carmen Ortiz defended the harsh prosecution despite mounting criticism from the tech community and legal experts. She insisted that stealing is stealing, whether you use a computer command or a crowbar, and whether you take documents, data, or dollars. But Aaron hadn't stolen anything for profit. He had downloaded academic papers with the intent to share knowledge freely. MIT played a controversial role by cooperating with federal prosecutors instead of defending one of the internet's most important innovators. The university adopted a position of neutrality that effectively sided with the government. MIT's own investigation later admitted they failed to consider Aaron's contributions to internet technology and the questionable nature of the charges against him. The legal pressure consumed Aaron's final months. He faced years of expensive litigation and the possibility of decades in prison if convicted at trial. Friends described him as increasingly isolated and depressed as the case destroyed his life. On January 11, 2013, Aaron took his own life at age 26. The criminal justice system killed him for trying to free information that belonged to humanity. But Aaron's death wasn't just a tragedy, it was a warning about what happens when institutions control the flow of human knowledge. Today, that warning echoes louder than ever. Tech giants control vast amounts of data while academic publishers still charge outrageous fees for taxpayer-funded research. The same laws that destroyed Aaron continue threatening programmers and activists who challenge these systems. Aaron's death galvanized activists worldwide and sparked crucial reforms. Senators Leahy and Wyden introduced Aaron's law to limit CFAA overreach, but the fight he started is far from over. For aspiring founders, Aaron's story raises a critical question: who controls access to your innovation? Before signing restrictive licenses, ask whether you're building the next breakthrough or the next barrier. In Aaron's name, question every EULA you accept. Innovate boldly, but build safeguards so the next Aaron Swartz doesn't become tomorrow's tragedy.